Council. I think I know everyone in the room. And we have got an amazing group of campaigners here tonight who are going to share their experience of building community support for changing our streets, cleaning up our air, and things that are incredibly difficult to kind of get everyone to imagine how different our streets could be. But actually, I hope we will all be inspired by what they've managed to achieve and the kind of changes that they've the kind of changes that they've managed to create. And I'm hoping that we can be really inspired so that in Islington we can work with networks of people living in different neighbourhoods to see if we can reduce the dominance of vehicle traffic and make sure that we can trust the air we breathe, that we can walk and cycle, and our children can walk and cycle to school, to the shops, to wherever it is that they want to go. So we've got a team from Waltham Forest over there, a whole 4 of them, and we have Dee from Camden. And Dee has been doing air pollution campaigning, but lots of things that relate to air pollution campaigning, apart from telling people about what the air we're breathing is like and what it might be doing to our health. It's also about getting people to see the things that we could do differently to reduce the impact of air pollution. So Dee's going to start, and then we're going to have Simon, who is from the London Cycling Campaign, and Paul from Waltham Forest generally, and Susan from Waltham Forest, and Dan, who are going to give some thoughts from Waltham Forest. Dan may just answer questions, but we'll see what happens when we get there. But just before you all start, I would like us to quickly whiz round the room, hear everyone's name, find out if you live in Islington, say that you live in Islington and say what street you live in, and if you don't live in Islington, say do you work here or what your interest in being here is. And we're going to start at the back with Bob, who's just doing some work on a computer. So he's going to say who he is and where he lives.
My name's Bob, I live in Islington. I'm here to learn more about air pollution.
And you live in
Mildmay.
Mildmay. Excellent. Adrian. What road do you live in? And your name? Yes. Fantastic.
My name's Benali, I live in Highbury in Highbury Stadium Square.
I'm Roger, I live on Penton Mill Road, that lovely healthy road.
I'm Chris, I live in Cross Street, St Mary's Ward, nearby.
I'm Mike, I live in St Mary's Ward, just off Liverpool Road. Lived there for about since 90.
I'm Paul, I live off Junction Road, which is another one of the unhealthy roads.
Robin Horsell Road, that's inside.
Fantastic.
Andrea, I live in Highbury Crescent, also Islington. I'm Wendy, I live in Aberdeen Road in Highbury.
I'm Jules and I live in Calabria Road in Highbury.
Fantastic.
I'm Ernie and I live in Drayton Park.
I'm Sean, I live in Canada.
Nicola, I live in Southwark, but I work in and for Islington.
Fabulous.
I'm Sue. I live in Ashmont Road, N19, very close to the Hornsey Lane, which is as far north in Islington as you can get.
Marvellous.
I'm Obi, and I live in Barnet, and here to learn more about air pollution. Really.
And you are filming.
Yes, I'm filming. Sorry.
Is there anyone who would rather not be filmed?
Sorry, I forgot to ask everyone about that question.
Yeah, don't worry, we've asked now, so it's fine. Is anyone... It's just kind of, people talking about how we get better streets.
Yeah, it's going to be posted on the London Greens YouTube channel, so hopefully it will inform more people about air pollution. Yeah.
And low traffic neighbourhoods.
Yes.
Fantastic. Dee, go for it.
Great. I'll actually stand up so I can see the slides. I hope that's okay. And actually, a bit of a full disclosure, my mum grew up on Mildmay Street, which is not actually there anymore, but I think given that we've got somebody from Mildmay, I have good connections with the area. I'm here with two hats on. I'm here, well, first of all, I'd like to say that we don't have all the answers at all in Camden. Our air in Camden is just as disgusting as it is everywhere else. And I'm in here as much to listen as I am to talk. But also in the spirit that I think that it's such a big boulder to shift, that the more that we can share information and learn from each other, the better chance we get of building that critical mass. And I'm here with two hats on. One is from Camden Greens, but the other one is one of the coordinators of Camden Air Action. And the reason we have this other organisation is that one of our great campaigners, actually, Sian Berry, who's a fellow London Assembly member with Caroline, who had been, and other Green Party members have been for years banging their heads against the brick wall, which was the council, not listening at all, because as soon as they heard Green Party, and I don't want to make this a party political issue at all, but they just switched off, and we just couldn't get anywhere. So a few of us, mainly Green Party members, but not exclusively, set up Camden Air Action, and doors have opened. I think sometimes just because it was... it's very direct, and we were able to bring in a slightly broader group of people, but sometimes because it wasn't seen as being a party political battle. And that's enabled us to make some of the changes that we have made, and more we hope to come. So Paul, would you go on to the next slide? You probably know about this, but I think it's probably worth just recapping on the foul things that are in our air. So we've got several types of pollution: tiny airborne particles, often called PM10 or PM2.5 in the jargon. They come from lots and lots of different sources. Oh, it's got a bit...
Yep, but luckily you've got a copy of it,
so
you can talk.
I've got nitrogen dioxide, which you will hear a lot about, which is where we monitor with the diffusion tubes. And then there's a whole range of other nasties: carbon monoxide, dioxide, ozone, organic compounds. Most of the limits that you hear people talking about are relating to the particulates and to NO2. The big cause of them is transport, it's cars, road transport, as Caroline was saying. Also trains, particularly diesel trains, of which we still have quite a lot going through beneath London's streets. And basically, and also the other important area is construction, boilers, domestic and commercial, industrial processes, wood-burning stoves, and bonfires. The health impacts fall into two categories, really. There's the acute, and those are the immediate impacts by being exposed to spikes of high pollution. And that's heart attacks, asthma attacks, and strokes. This can kill. But the other unseen one is the chronic effects, which can be late onset asthma, chest complaints, allergic reactions, and impaired lung development in children, and dementia. So pollution is not just something that's a bit unpleasant, it actually is dangerous. Would you do the next one? Thank you. So the Camden Council had been doing some monitoring, and it was doing 4 locations, and the big continuous real-time monitors are big bits of expensive kit, but they're very useful because they're the ones that can show you if you're likely to get an acute spike that can cause those immediate health impacts. Now they have them in 4 locations: Russell Square, Swiss Cottage, Shaftesbury Avenue and Euston Road. They're all in the south of our borough, and also the thing is that these are all quite open areas, and so they won't necessarily see the kind of... Pollution is worse when it's kept in narrow streets, narrow busy streets with idling cars. These are not really those. So we didn't think that they were showing us the best acute problems. And similarly, Islington has got 2 of these big bits of kit, and they're near the Arsenal and on Holloway Road. And it's really hard to get the councils to change those. They just won't, because they're connected with other London-wide things. Also, they were doing, and you can see them, you can go and see your daily readings on that website, and you'll be coming home coughing and spluttering, and then you'll see that it tells you that pollution is moderate. So you're thinking, well, something's not quite right. So then on the diffusion tube, which is the long-term, the chronic stuff, they had 16 locations across Camden, the council did, and they were kind of a weird combination of things. Because they were trying to look for long-term trends, they again weren't in the real pollution hotspot. So some of them were in private roads in Hampstead. And their rationale was that, well, we're not trying to see how dangerous the roads are, we're just measuring trends. So, and if I couldn't find out, on one thing that we have managed to get Camden to do is to be more transparent about what it's doing. Because I couldn't find on Islington website where the council diffusion tubes are. They don't tell you at all. So could I have the next one? So we thought we're not really satisfied with that. We're going to do our own. So we did the classic citizen science NO2, nitrogen dioxide monitoring. They're the diffusion tubes. They're quite cheap. They're about £10 each. But they're it's slightly misnomer to call them citizen science because these are the standards that the European Union, the governments, public bodies all use. So they are a really good measure of the background, the long-term pollution. We did it at the Green Party. Some neighbourhood forums got involved, community groups and schools, and we've done hundreds of them now across Camden, including measuring pollution outside all 100 schools in Camden in 3-month-long periods between February and May last year. And this included the private schools in the borough, which I'll come to a bit later. We found that all of the locations were above the danger level. That's the World Health Organization. 20 micrograms per cubic metre, even in the middle of Hampstead. So, I mean, actually there is nowhere in the whole of Camden that has, the borough of Camden, that has healthy air. And I'm sure other inner London boroughs are suffering similar things.
There's nowhere in Islington.
Absolutely. And most of the locations were actually illegal. You might have heard the case that the law firm Client Earth has been taking against the government for not having plans to get us beneath the European Union targets, and that's at 40 micrograms. Most of them were illegal, and that includes most of the schools were at illegal limits. We did a bit of particulates monitoring, but it's a much harder thing to do and harder to get. It's in real time. But even so, even with our bit of very cheap kit that we managed to con a company into say that we wanted to do it on a trial. I didn't say that's where being filmed. We managed to do a review. We wrote a review of it afterwards. But it did actually show, you can see the spikes as you sit by the side of the road. You can see the spikes of particulates when different sorts of transport go by. So it's showing you the immediate impact. So this is just some of us doing it. I don't have time for some pictures here. That was for the schools on the collection boxes and the upper ladder. A stunt we had on the high street with children. We got schools involved, which really helped, and that's at King's Cross. So next one, please. Thank you. And these are just some of the results. I'll just swiftly go through these. That's our clean spot there in Hampstead Heath. The rest of them are all, and you can see the amount that are above. Anything orange and above is above illegal levels.
That's the 40 micrograms,
that's
the
right.
EU one rather than the World
That's
Health
it, that's
Organization.
the 40 micrograms is the EU one, and you can see we've got some really nasties here. That's by Kentish Town Tube, which is over 2.5 times the legal limit, or about 2.5 times. And that's what's interesting. This is Highgate by Waterloo Park, which is on the edge of Islington. Really high there. So actually, air pollution is no respecter of your property prices. So, on to the next one, please, Paul. This is another one, the Primrose Hill. Yes, again, as you can see, again, most of those are near, or above the legal limits. And also, these are a monthly average. So this is measuring, bearing in mind those two types of pollution. If that's the average, which includes weekends and night times, there are bound to be really dangerous spikes in there somewhere, which we're not seeing and which could be causing real health harm. Just one more map, and this is down near the south of the borough, around King's Cross. You can see some horrible ones there by King's Cross. But what is interesting, coming on to this a bit later, is that relatively low pollution here, really near King's Cross, around the back of the Crick Centre, and that is because there is some really good traffic management there. Lots of the roads are one-way or cul-de-sacs, and it just shows that if you stop traffic going through, there are some schools there, you stop pollution. It's not rocket science. You take the cars out of here, and the pollution is lower. And who would have thought that you can live in Somerstown and actually have healthier air than you can in parts of Hampstead and Highgate?
Just ask, is that, what square is that?
This
Square.
which square is
Green patch.
there.
Yeah.
That's Regent's Park.
It's Regent's Park.
Yeah. We've actually done some more. We've covered most of the borough. We started off with the energy, we tended to be around Kentish Town, but we've now pretty much covered most of the borough with different local groups doing the measurements. And it's the same. And actually, because of different people coming on board at different times, we've had some really good longitudinal studies that show that things aren't getting better. So when you have the government or even the Mayor of London sometimes saying, oh, pollution is getting better, it really isn't, not according to our measurements.
Did you measure in the park?
Pardon?
Did you do any measurements?
In Regent's Park?
Can we hold any questions? Hold on to them till the we're racing through time.
Okay, great. Okay, the next one, please. So, we got fed up with monitoring because actually a lot of groups, and in fact the council gave some money to do more monitoring, and we think that actually they're happy for us just to keep our energy going. We need more figures, more levels. And we know it's polluted. So we came up with a bit of an action plan based at 3 levels. Individual change. What can we all do differently to reduce pollution? What can we do working with our communities? And what do we need to demand of others? And our next level that we can demand was the council. What do we need the council to do? And so we split up things of what, and I can tell you a bit more of those later. But the charges were that the council just didn't want to listen because this is big. And they just thought somehow they could say the right things and we'd all shut up and go away. But they produced an air quality action plan, and the more we got to know stuff, the more we were able to challenge their vague wordings of working towards and things like other sorts of shifts, so like paradigm shifts and whatever other stuff they're putting in there. They also didn't follow up on any of the pledges that they made. And what they also love doing is sending the problem upstairs. Is that, oh, well, the Mayor of London's got a big plan going, so we better wait till that. And also, oh, that's a Transport for London road. I tell you, there are fewer Transport for London roads than Camden was making out. They almost everywhere with the bus on saying, oh, no, we can't do anything about that, it's Transport for London. They're actually very few. So we were able to put them on the spot and say, no, that's not a reason for not doing anything. And of course, and this is politics, is that lots of the voters actually have cars and they don't want to not be able to drive their cars around. So it was a problem. So we had more meetings and did more stunts. The other issue that we have is that in Hampstead we have the largest number of private schools in the borough. In the country. And so people tend to drive there because the parents that send their children to private schools, as they've said to us, they do not want their children to go on public transport. and they do come from further away as well. And that not only creates pollution around the schools, it creates a plume of pollution across the borough as they're driving. A lot of them actually come from Highbury. Actually, there's a route through from Highbury and Highgate over to Hampstead. Of course, there's HS2, which again, the council goes, oh, there's HS2. Well, the thing is, what we're trying to say is you have to reduce what you can, because the construction work of HS2, or any construction work, is going to create pollution. You have to bring down what you can. And of course, coming back to the thing about communities, it's like, where do you start? This is such a big thing to do. So we started off by just seeing what can we do. So these are some of the things that we have managed to do. Are people here aware of what a healthy school street is? If not, I can explain it. We're not by no means the first borough to do this. This is where you close off the streets around a school during drop-off and pick-up time. So temporary closure during the day. Very cheap. Costs £8,800 per school, which is about a quarter of the cost of a sleeping policeman. And they're shown to dramatically reduce the amount of traffic around the school. Not only does it make the school actually much safer and healthier because there aren't cars around, children can walk safely by the school, but also it stops people driving to the schools. Because if you've got to park up with your child a couple of streets away, the convenience of taking your child to the school with your engine idling while they jump out is gone. And St Joseph's, the one that was actually has been in action now for about a year, has shown really substantial drops in traffic around the school. And there are now 2 others in the pipeline, of Gospel Oak and Ackland Burley. Play streets is another thing that people can do quite easily. Lots of them tend to be at the weekends. We're now introducing them after school, because the great thing about having an after-school play street is that that's during rush hour. So again, it's meaning that you're reclaiming the space for children, for people, rather than cars. We also work closely with the transition movement because that means that we can do some positive stuff, not just being against. So there's a cottage garden at Kentish Thames Station, which lots of people like. That's an example of greening, a reverse greening project. We've been working with some schools. Acton is going to get its own orchard and other creating gardens, having clean air picnics to invite lots of people along to show that actually there's a way of celebrating clean air on Hampstead Heath, where else. And then there's a bit of cross-Camden coordination. We're working with the neighbourhood forums. Neighbourhood forums have power because they can object to various planning proposals. And so we're having a meeting, we're organising a meeting of neighbourhood forums across the borough with businesses on the 8th of March, because businesses, it's very important to get them on board, because as councils get very scared of upsetting business, and we're getting some quite good feedback that they're seeing that healthy streets means good business for them. And we have, Camden is now actually talking to us. We've got some campaigners addressed a full council meeting for the first time on the 29th of January. In fact, it was the same day that Paul came to speak to another one of our groups. And now we've had the first ever concrete pledge from Camden Council on air pollution, ever, which is that they pledged to meet the tougher WHO standards, which is 20 micrograms. They're slightly complicated, actually, the WHO standards, but broadly, the 20 microgram per cubic metre standards by 2030. Now, this looks good, but 2030 is 3 administrations away, so it hasn't sort of escaped our notice that rather than promising to do something more modest in 4 years, they're doing something really ambitious in 12 years. So what we're engaged on now is setting milestones, exactly, so that they can do them. So almost done. Last slide is done, but there's still some issues to tackle. The private school run, even though some of those private schools in Hampstead have some of the highest pollution levels in the borough, it's really hard to get to those schools and to the parents, because these are businesses really, although they're often classed as charities. They don't want to publicise the fact that the air around their schools is unhealthy. They don't want to in any way challenge their parents who might go elsewhere. So this is still something that we're worried about. But what we'd love to do is, if there is any way of working with some of the families who live here, is to get them to use the overground, because many of those journeys, actually, you could very happily get the London Overground, because it drops at Finchley Road, West Hampstead, lots of the schools are around there. Could we make a party of going on the Overground? I think it's just the first time there is a fear of going onto public transport. Another thing is looking at introducing stricter parking measures around Hampstead, so really another way of deterring people driving there and parking there, higher fines, more and more zigzags or other kinds of restrictions. We still don't have enough filtering, and we need to get moving on that. The council is still...
Filtering is something that's going to come up in the next bit, so we could let them...
About that. Exactly. And the other thing is that we have, probably the same in Islington, we have far too many parking places. There's probably, I don't know if Islington's the same, in Camden we have relatively low car ownership, but often particularly among those living in the most polluted areas, and yet we have lots of parking provision. So we have now been working with the council, we're still badgering them, to remove parking bays, which are council think, removing a parking bay, but putting a small park in it so there is an obvious gain, and that's what we're going to be working on this coming year. We want more real-time monitoring, because if you remember earlier this year when Brixton Road was closed, that's because they have one of these real-time monitors on a road that suffers from high traffic, idling traffic, and it's a canyon, it's quite enclosed. And I'm sure that many of our roads are no better than that, it's just that we don't have the real-time monitoring to show it. And we also want proper emergency traffic measures. Other cities around the world have it. If the pollution is that bad, don't just tell us not to go out, except that they don't, because they don't have proper measuring. They should get the traffic out, not us. Why is that balance goes to all the time? We must keep the traffic flowing rather than people being able to use the streets. So this is the next thing that we're working on, and cross-borough collaboration, because the thing is that the last thing we want to do is stop the pollution and the traffic in our borough and throw it onto somewhere else. Working together is the way. I worked with Mount Pleasant neighbourhood forum when they were doing their monitoring, and that's a wonderful example because they're partly in Camden and partly in Islington, so they were able to get the overall picture and therefore challenge the big Mount Pleasant development on a joined-up basis. So I think this is the way. We don't want in any way for us to be in any way picked off or any divide and rule. Working together is definitely the answer, I think. And then just one more slide, and then I'm done. And there we go, there's some pictures. That's what a healthy school street looks like. It's reinforced by some removable bollards, and it was all done in consultation with the staff and with parents, and so they're just put up and taken down twice a day. That's our cottage garden on Kentish Town Station, which gets people thinking about planting and greening up Play Street. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Well, there's just one person from Camden, so we're covering an awful lot of ground. So that, everyone, is the background, a quick tour of air pollution campaigning. And the next part, which we're going to move swiftly on to, because we're going to hold questions for the end, is about how many people here know what Mini Holland is? Just a quick hand up. Mini Holland? Okay, there's a few people who don't, so that's good. It is something very exciting that has been happening in a neighbouring borough, Waltham Forest. And I think I'm just going to hand over to you guys to get started. Do you know which order are we going to go in? Simon first. And Simon needs to make...
Yeah, so apologies, no slides from me. I'm Simon Munk, I'm the infrastructure campaigner for London Cycling Campaign, and I'm also a long-term campaigner in Waltham Forest, one of the people who's very heavily involved in campaigning for Mini Holland, alongside the other people we're going to hear from very shortly. I have to say something very rubbish first, which is London Cycling Campaign is a non-politically partisan organisation. I will quite happily come and talk to Tories and Labour people and Lib Dems and anyone else. I just happen to be here tonight. So,
just to be clear, this, although it's a meeting that has been organised by the Green Party, there are people here who are not Green Party members. So it's an open meeting. So
I'm just very happy to talk about low traffic neighbourhoods. Essentially, Waltham Forest has created several what I call low traffic neighbourhoods. Other people call modal filter cells. There are all sorts of different bits of jargon. But essentially, they're areas, residential areas, that are bounded by main roads, train lines, rivers, whatever, but kind of a self-contained residential area where you cannot drive from one side to the other. It's as simple as that. Modal filter cells and low traffic neighbourhoods, what they do is they stop through traffic. So many of you will live in areas where there is that infamous road that just has cars herring down it all the time, that is fundamentally residential, that has that has houses. It's not an A road. It shouldn't be an A road, but it's treated like an A road because Google Maps or Waze or whatever, or the local cabbies or whoever knows that they can shave 30 seconds off a set of traffic lights, or they know that they can get through it very quickly. We came to low traffic neighbourhoods in Waltham Forest kind of not through pollution at all, and there is an accidental gain for pollution. Essentially, when the Mini Holland, so Boris Johnson, the previous mayor, announced funding for 3 boroughs to get £30 million each for cycling schemes. And lots of boroughs bid for £30 million because, of course, who doesn't want £30 million? And they all have different approaches. Waltham Forest's approach, which we pushed them to do, was essentially to look at Hackney and go, yeah, we can do some things like they do. Hackney have for decades been doing modal filter cells or low traffic neighbourhoods, bit by bit by bit. De Beauvoir Town is a classic example of a low traffic neighbourhood in Hackney. So we kind of pushed the council, and it turns out there were offices inside the council also pushing to do these low traffic neighbourhoods. And so we came at it from the point of view of cycling, which is if you get rid of all the cars in an area, you make very, very low traffic, there's not many car movements, it's great for walking and cycling. But it turns out that what's really good for walking and cycling with these low traffic neighbourhoods is also really good for pollution, is also really good for health, is also really good for community. So when you get rid of all the traffic, and there's
through traffic.
Yeah, all the through traffic. It's very important to point out that. I'm being pulled up by my own team through motor traffic. Thank you very much, Paul. That's actually very important. So what it means is a low traffic neighbourhood or a modal filter cell. What it means is that people walking and cycling, people on scooters, people on mobility scooters, whatever, they can go straight through the whole neighbourhood because what's stopping the cars is not stopping them. And there are even, for instance, modal filter cell approaches that mean that buses go straight through the neighbourhood as well. But what can't go straight through the neighbourhood is cars and motorbikes, and vans and HGVs and things like that. That doesn't mean that as some people in Waltham Forest claimed before it happened, that all the cars would be stuck there forever, or that you would never be able to get a delivery or an ambulance or a bin pickup or anything like that. What it means is that if you come in from this side of the modal filter cell from the main road over there, you come in, you go out the same way. So it's as simple as that. Your deliveries, your services, you, when you're driving, come in one side, you go out the same side when you leave. It's as simple as that. And what it means is that there is much lower levels of traffic. We saw roads in the first village go from 2,000, 5,000, down to hundreds. One road memorably went down to 69 cars a day. I remember very clearly one of the roads going down to that number. I don't know why that's stuck in my head. So it's a dramatic drop in traffic levels. With that, we knew would come more cycling. The people who live in that side that cell, for them, if they want to go from there to there, it's a little bit longer to drive around. It takes a little bit longer. They're on the main roads. That discourages people from doing stupid journeys that they might be otherwise a bit silly and a bit lazy. We all do it. We all think, you know what, I can't be bothered. It's a bit raining. I'm not going to go to 10 minutes walk to the shops, or it's 2 minutes to the car. I'll just get in the car and go. Those journeys become a little bit less convenient. It's not a 2-minute journey anymore. It's a 4-minute journey, and you have to sit at some lights and get a bit frustrated. So suddenly, the people who were doing some of those journeys, they stop doing them. And they go and they walk or they cycle or they do whatever. Particularly because the whole neighbourhood now feels very quiet and safe, so people who wouldn't cycle before within their neighbourhood start cycling. School run journeys get dramatically impacted on that, for instance. We saw an awful lot of the school runs cut instantly. There are some of the neighbourhoods and some of the schools where there was lots of parents, driving up, and they were driving even 100 metres, 200 metres to the school. And they stopped because it was just a pain in the backside. You can still do it if you need to, if you want to, but doing it is a little bit less convenient. The safer streets meant you'd start seeing parents out with their kids on bikes. Kids would learn on the bikes, kids would run around in the streets. You started seeing play streets, people talked about play streets earlier, 24/7 play streets. One of the things, so I get very emotional about Waltham Forest and how amazing it is. If you've not been yet to the Waltham Forest Mignon, and those of you in the room who haven't heard of Mignon, didn't put your hands up, just flipping go there, basically. You don't need to take that's a great thing now, is you don't need to take my word for it, you don't need to take any of these people's word for it, just go to Waltham Forest. There's actually an online map, Waltham Forest Study Coming, we have a map of what's currently in, what's happening and stuff like that. So you just go and wander around, and you will instantly see what I'm talking about. But one of the greatest moments for me was, I was on a tour with 20 TfL engineers, various council people and whatever. We were around in the street, there were 10 kids playing in the street. That would never have happened before. So Susan's going to talk to you a bit more about that, about the lived-in day-to-day experience. But what we see is we expected walking and cycling rates would go through the roof, and they have done from the initial data we have. We also knew traffic levels in that area would reduce. We didn't know quite how much, but we knew they would go down. They've gone down dramatically in those areas. But and concomitantly, we were pretty sure we don't have pollution monitoring, which is an annoyance to say the least, but we're pretty sure pollution will have gone down. But what we also saw was neighbours talking to each other. We saw people coming out of the houses. We saw kids playing out in the streets. We see over and over again when these areas go in, people fix their fences. The dumped mattresses disappear. People start talking to each other. People stop in the streets. We've had some of the most angry people. I mean, it has been a controversial set of schemes. Paul's going to talk about how you do it without avoiding the controversy that some of Waltham Forest are seeing. But the first scheme, for instance, was very controversial. People who were incredibly angry, incandescently angry with me, and they basically accused Paul and I and Dan of having caused Armageddon and the apocalypse and heralded the rearrival of 4 horsemen, except they couldn't get into the village because they were stuck outside it. I've had people who would scream at me in the street come up to me 6 months later and go, "It's lovely, the bird song. You can hear the bird song." Bird song seems to be something that people really notice. They don't notice the fact that everyone's walking and cycling. They don't notice the fact the pollution's gone, but they can hear the bird song. And they come up, and I had to kind of go, "I'm so happy that you are now enjoying the scheme," and then walk away and punch a wall or something. So we've had this amazing experience that didn't really come from a pollution background, but what we had was great walking and cycling, but added community as well. But what we then see is, so one of the big concerns about these areas, these low traffic areas, is what happens to all the vehicles inside them, what happens to all the cars that were there driving through those areas. We had roads, as I said, in the first village that were around 5,000 vehicles a day. So where do those 5,000 vehicles go, and do they not just bung up every main road? That's a standard accusation against these schemes. It's a standard accusation against just about every major cycling scheme. And if you increase the amount of vehicles on the main road slows down. Surely that's going to cause loads more pollution on the main road. It's a disaster. Don't do it. It's terrible. Well, that's a load of cobblers. Basically, I'm going to say that very clearly. This is slightly complicated, but essentially there is an idea called traffic evaporation. And the short answer is, if you are driving along a road and you get to a traffic jam, you tend to spend the same amount of time in that traffic jam. And if the traffic jam is much longer, you find somewhere else to go. If that's happening every day, day in, day out, you adjust your behaviour. Yeah? And so if you introduce a scheme that completely cuts out all the through traffic in an area, and you suddenly find yourself on the main road, that main road bungs up. It does bung up for 3 months, maybe 6 months. If you're really, really unlucky, 9 months. And you need a council that's willing to go with you on that journey. But the people who are in that jam, over time, they go, "Well, I can't be bothered with this. I'm going to do something different." Now, where we are in Walthamstow, some of those people stay on the North Circular, another junction round. Some of those people say, "Well, you know what, I'm going to go to Newham." Some of those people say, "I just can't be bothered, I'm going to train." And some of those people say, "You know what, I didn't really need to do that journey in the first place." And some of those people say, "You know what, I've got a bike in the shed, and I was going from here to here, it's 10 minutes. It just doesn't make any sense anymore. I'm just not going to do it by car. I'll do it on bike or on foot." So over time, what happens is the mode shift happens, and the evaporation happens, and people change their habits, and the result is that about a year later, you're back to exactly where you were before. But all the traffic in the middle's gone down. So the village scheme is right next to a big road called Leabridge Road. That road is up 1% now in traffic terms. Forest Road, which is next to the second big modal village, is down on traffic. Now, it's down on an overall trend of drop in traffic, but it's down. So these main roads have not bunged up. They have not got more congested. They are not worse. They are basically, a year later, the same as they were a year ago. So the same people are sitting in the jam going, "Yeah, I'm still sitting in the jam." Some other people came along and went, "Oh, can't be bothered with this," and went somewhere else. So overall,
when you say went somewhere else, you mean travelled differently?
Travelled differently. Some of them just drove somewhere else, but they drove far away. Some of them changed their journey mode. Some of them didn't make those journeys. Some of them did all sorts of other things. So we can't tell exactly what happened, but what we can tell is across that area, the first village, including the main roads, we're down 16% on traffic counts. So that means that 16% of the cars across the whole area, including the main roads, have gone. And the pollution benefits of that for the people living inside that area, but also on the main road, are massive. So that's low traffic neighbourhoods in a nutshell. I'm now going to hand over, I think, to Susan, who's going to talk about what it's like to live in one of those neighbourhoods, and what it's like to walk through one of those neighbourhoods, and what it's like to not get through one of those neighbourhoods.
Don't get up to that. So I would consider myself a non-expert, if you like. My qualification for being here really is that, well, I actually listened to you becoming emotional makes me emotional as well, because I had a bit of an epiphany about the whole scheme. Of course, things are going to be better if you've got less cars on the street. I have walked my children to primary school every day while they were there, and let me tell you, the difference between walking on Walthamstow streets pre-Mini Holland and after Mini Holland, it's like the difference between night and day. I just can't tell you how fantastic it is. You know, if you've walked children to school in even the last couple of years, you will know that, I mean, the only way to describe it is just a complete bum-fight on the streets out there, really. It is, you know, you cannot believe it, the amount of traffic. What, Walthamstow?
No, Mini Holland.
Mini Holland? What big an area is it, really?
So
it's 2 square miles.
I think we're going to try and keep questions to the end, but very...
I just know by the time the end comes, I'll forget.
Very briefly, there are 3 modal filter cells in. Most of them are around 1 kilometre square.
Okay, how many people live in that square?
About 5,000-6,000 people in each ski area.
But you can, the thing about, so again, it's slightly complicated, we're drifting slightly off topic. The thing that's great about low traffic neighbourhoods is you can put a low traffic neighbourhood in here, got a main road, put a low traffic in neighbourhood in there, you put a little crossing between the two, and suddenly you've got 2 low traffic neighbourhoods that join together. You put another one there, another one there, another one there, another one there. Put them all around tube stations, train stations, bus stations, etc. And suddenly what you have is schools, is ways that people can get through, walking or cycling, and not through by car, and it really discourages the traffic movements around those areas.
So I'm not an expert at all, I'm just a pedestrian, as I always describe myself, angry pedestrian. But so on the route that I'd walk my children to school, so before Mini Holland, I always say that, you know, we've got 21st century traffic poured onto 19th century streets, and really the 19th century streets cannot cope at all. One of the main streets, I think it was Barrett Road, is completely gridlocked every morning, and there was one morning in particular, I remember there was a guy screaming out the window of his van, or there was a standoff happening, and as I walked round, I just remember seeing that what that caused was that there were children then trying to navigate streets that had been completely backed up, and there are other drivers trying to, you know, performing, you know, dangerous manoeuvres because they're trying to get around all those cars. And it's just chaos, really. It's havoc for anyone just trying to walk to school. So after that Barrett Road was filtered, you've got a section there that had flowers planted there, and you know, it is only permeable by people on foot and on bike. And suddenly you've created a safe place for people to cross in the morning. You've got suddenly a community gardening scheme springs up where they've got incredible planting there, and it's actually it's safe to walk to school. I mean, for me, it was such an epiphany experiencing that from the one thing to the other. As I say, it's like night and day. I think that if you're talking about engaging particular groups of people, I think there's always a group of people, with all due respect to everybody else here, they're going to say, air pollution, I don't care, I can't see it, doesn't matter, it's not grey, haze in the air, I can't see it. Cyclists, I'm not a cyclist, I don't care about that, that's not how I get to... But there are so many people that are just taking their children to school, and the fact that we've all kind of got used to this kind of danger on the streets every day. The fact that they could have a proposition where you don't have to, you know, sort of run the gamut of all these cars coming at you is such an amazing thing, it really is. So I think lots of people that, like myself, that probably wouldn't have considered themselves any kind of campaigner or any advocate of anything before now, just because of the fact that you can just walk around safely, it just completely changes your mind. And so you must come to Waltham Forest, come and have a look. Definitely walk around at 8:30 in the morning, and you would see the difference between the areas that are not filtered and the areas that have been. It's incredible. You do experience pushback. There was incredible pushback on... I'm lucky to live in there, and generally it's been filtered, but I also live on the one street that absolutely hasn't, because of an incredible pushback from some of the local residents. And I think that obviously I had a long time to think about this, and I think what a lot of people are concerned about is that in their area they think that by not being able to drive through and having this, you know, freedom of being able to drive anywhere they like, they feel like they're having the power taken away from them. And actually what everybody's got to remember is that this process, you're giving the street back to the people that actually live on it, you know, and it gives them an opportunity. This is when you see the community gardening schemes springing up, and they're actually, people are out in the street and planting in the tree pits around by the streets, and actually feeling like they own some of the area that they live in. Some of the play streets come up. This is when you actually see people, engaging with each other more at a meaningful level, just because you're out and talking to each other. Crime goes down because people are more visible, people improve their area. There's just so many waterfall benefits that happen from this. So it's unfortunate in my area that some people have seen that it's some kind of removal of power, because it really is giving people possession of their own streets again. So I'd say just to finish, so it's generally, if you're looking for groups of people to engage with, I think one of the people that are probably not the first to be considered, just people walking to school, just people, pedestrians. So getting schools engaged, getting parents engaged is really key. And if you want to ask me questions later about what it's like to live in a filtered area, I'm happy to tell you, but it's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, who's actually going to show us some pictures.
I was just going to introduce, I think there's a perfect segue from what Susan was talking about to what Paul's talking about, which is, so the schemes in Waltham Forest, particularly the first scheme, was controversial. The first scheme, the first boat built itself, was massively controversial, it's fair to say. Protests outside the town hall, protests in the area, Coffin marched up a high street on the pavement that they wouldn't have been able to walk on because it would have been closed, etc, etc, etc. So it's a very, very angry thing. But part of the reason why was because there was a real failure across the community between residents and the council. The council didn't talk to the residents, and the residents got all kind of in bent out shape. Engagement is absolutely key to neighbourhood sales and low traffic neighbourhoods. Having a real conversation between the council and the community having a conversation in itself.
So could you go to cue the...
Yeah.
So, I'm Paul Gasson, member of Living Streets. I have also been heavily involved with the Waltham Forest cycling campaign. Local resident, right in the epicentre of where the very first filter permeability scheme went into Walthamstow Village. So there's a picture. All the pictures are from my immediate streets in the local area. What I want to talk to you about today is around creating an appetite for low traffic neighbourhoods. So it's around the kind of justifications, the reasons, the problems, all the rest of it. Looking at engagement specifically, who do you need to engage with and how can you do that in a sensible way, in a way which perhaps helps you